Hello and welcome to Talking Bottom. I'm Paul Tanter.
I'm Angela Pearson.
And I'm Matt Brooks.
This week, as part of our theme series to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the world's greatest sitcom, we're looking at a gross and disgusting universe. It's one of the topics we found ourselves drawn to as we do our research for the book Talking Bottom, A Guide to the Cult Sitcom, which we're currently writing.
That's the plug-in, nice and subtle, early on, brilliant. Carry on.
Thank you. There are many unique, fantastic and outlandish universes in the world of fiction. There's the zombies and cannibalism of The Walking Dead, the female subjugation of The Handmaid's Tale, the casual violence and horrific assaults of A Clockwork Orange, the infertility and impending extinction of humanity in Children of Men, the never-ending war and crushing of the individual by the state in 1984, and the Middle Ages-style poverty combined with high chance of slavery of Game of Thrones, which also adds in the likelihood of being savagely murdered by soldiers or being burned to death by dragons. With the exception of The League of Gentlemen, no other sitcom exists in a universe quite like the one Richie and Eddie inhabit. It's a hypercharged version of our world, where all the seedy parts are dialed up to 11. It's a world where dinners are prepared from the contents of urban alleyways and last week's scrapings from the fridge, where dead dogs end up on kebab spits and colostomy bags are balled up like curries. It's a world of dodgy doctors performing back alley surgery and selling the organs on the black market, where men desperate for cash to bet on horses will happily steal an amputee's false leg and their own grandmother's gold teeth. It's a world of violence and self-mutilation, where chainsaws, cattle prods, frying pans and forks are used to dismember, electrocute, smash and stab the residents of Hammersmith. And it's a world where you're never far from freshly spilled bodily fluids. Whether it's blood spraying from a severed finger, a lake of vomit hurled up after an evening on the beer and lard, or the diuretic splashings of inept trick-or-treaters. Now, after our episode on class and poverty, I want to make clear that anything gross and dark here is not to be conflated with poverty. The characters in Bottom aren't poor by choice, but by circumstance, but them being squalid and perverse is a choice. Being poor doesn't mean you need to drink the contents of the drip tray, but being skanky makes you more inclined to do it.
That's rather poetic, Paul.
Thank you.
It's very surprising. Normally you just swear and get bitter.
Well, in the absence of a hugely long Wikipedia summary to read this week, I thought I'd better write something. So.
Yeah, fair enough.
Very good, yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly. There isn't anything beyond The League of Gentlemen quite like Bottom, is there, in terms of the grotesque?
Not in sitcom. When I was thinking about worlds or fictions to compare it to, everything always came back to either cartoons or fantasy.
What do you mean by fantasy? Like Game of Thrones sort of thing?
Like that kind of thing, yeah.
Tell you what I always think of, not a complete comparison, but I think of Richie and Eddie's Hammersmith akin to Springfield, where at the drop of a hat, the crowds would turn into a riot, at any moment.
They're literally a mob outside the window, and any opportunity for depravity or criminal activity. So like as soon as they leave the shop unattended for a moment, they're literally looting.
And everyone's on the take. Everyone's a bit dodgy. Lionel Hutz, Apu, whatever and stuff. So in Bottom, there's very few quote unquote normal people. Off the top of my head, the gas man. Probably the most normal person in all of Bottom, and some of the workers in the Marveloso Splendido Hotello, like the chambermaid, quite normal.
Yeah,
many characters we don't even see, just hear of. One of my favourite throwaway gags is Dodgy Bob McMayday, the most violent travel agent in the world. It's fucking poetry. That's my least favourite episode, but my favourite line.
There's a lot of those characters that we never see that have those weird names, isn't there?
Yeah.
That sort of populate this weird universe.
Yeah, I've written down a few of my favourites. You've got Harry, I'll do anything for half a pint Grundy. Obviously, Skull Crusher Henderson. Obviously, from Bottom Live 2, you've got Jeffrey, the psychopathic penis remover.
Oh, what's he in for?
Yeah. And Horace Big. And then, obviously, just Harry the Bastard. You've got Keith and Deirdre McFrenzy is their surname, which isn't made like a big deal of, is it? Keith and Deirdre.
That's true. There's a lot of mucks, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, this is my
Richard. That's a fake one, though, isn't it?
It's not a muck, but it's definitely it's the other it's the O. So you've got Mad Dog Patrick. Do you want some of this? Oh, fist. So the muck and the O is the Irish kind of violent.
So
which one's he in? Which one's he from?
I'm trying to remember now. I read it off the old Wikipedia. Well, is it in the live shows?
Maybe. I think that rings a bell that's been in a live show.
Oh,
Some of them are
Fist.
nicknames and some of them are actual names. Like, I think the Do You Want Some of This is the nickname, but Fist is his actual
Is that,
name.
yeah, exactly. And then like Tubbs Lardy, like he's definitely been nicknamed that because he's a big fat bastard, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's like that thing of like nicknames are either usually to lampoon what your physical appearance is or something that's happened to you in your childhood.
Yeah.
Like affectionate sometimes, but then these are not affectionate in any way, are they?
They've usually got one defining characteristic that Richie and Eddie use to identify them, don't they?
Tight mouth Larry.
Yeah. the nickname that Richie has, the cunt.
So does the universe of Bottom have its own kind of set of rules? A bit like Springfield does. As Springfield as is an animation, you can have the thing of, well, everything's reset the next week, things are back to normal.
Yeah.
Injuries disappear, that kind of thing.
Absolutely, it's definitely that.
But also, is there a kind of... when I think of Richie and Eddie's Hammersmith, I think of the opening shots of Contest and Smells, which is a rainy, dark night. I know they go outside during the day in this show, but it always seems to be gloomy and dark.
Drizzly.
And
British weather, right?
Yeah.
What we know as actual British people, not people looking at like, an American watching England.
Yeah, like the fact that drizzle balls and all of that, like looking out the window mournfully, wanting to go outside, but stuck indoors. I mean, pretty much like we've all been in lockdown, but it wasn't raining every day here, was it? It was actually quite sunny, which was
really
cruel.
hot summer. Just hanging around in my pants with a beard, crying.
Which is probably what Eddie would do, but with the curtains closed.
Yeah, I guess so. Can they grow beards though? Of course they can. What are we talking about?
I would imagine so.
We can't grow hair. The bald people can grow hair on their face though, right?
I think so.
Yeah. What about pubes?
No, they can't grow pubes on their face.
No, you can glue them on though, I think.
So
But yeah, is it called pathetic fallacy when the weather reflects your mood?
Pathetic fallacy. Wasn't that your nickname in school?
seasonal anxiety
Pathetic
disorder
fellatio.
is, I think, when the weather affects your mood. It's just
What was it?
Seasonal anxiety disorder.
Oh yeah, sorry, but I mean
Spells
in
sad.
literary or filmic, I think Shakespeare did it. I don't know if he actually coined the phrase. He coined a lot of them, didn't he?
Yeah.
But I think I seem to remember from the annals of my mind in English literature A level, it was pathetic fallacy if the weather is reflecting the character's mood, which is why often in any film, as soon as someone's broken up with someone or something, they walk outside and of course
Raining.
it's pouring with rain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Charlie Brown with the rain cloud following him.
Yeah.
Cartoon again. A lot of the dark and gross universe stuff can be summed up with how dodgy literally every person in authority is. Like the sex shop owner. That's another one that's could be just been a really small, thankless part, but there's something a bit weird about him.
I mean, sex shop owner is going to be pretty squalid, isn't
Sort of
he?
traditional stereotype, isn't it? Or one assumes when you go into a sex shop. I've never once been.
No, never in my life. I don't need sexual aids. But even when he says "morning vicar, lovely day" out the window, Richie, you don't see it, but the vicar clearly flicks in the V's
or something. Or,
yeah, he's like, oh, charming. So even the people in authority
Yeah.
are vile.
And that's the window from which he constantly throws refuse down onto the
people,
street.
onto that man.
Yeah. But is it that Richie and Eddie are so vile
Yeah.
and they then bring that out in other people?
Yeah, I think so. It's the vicar. That's the point. It's not just an angry vicar. It's that cunt. Oh, fuck off. Don't ever come to my church again, you prick. Maybe. It could be either one. Works very well. Rottweiler, huge standout one of just living seaside postcard, string vest. Doesn't have the hanky on the head, but I always picture him like that.
Yeah, he
Bright
would
red
be at the
face.
seaside, wouldn't he? But in the underpants and everything. And he literally embodies the name Rottweiler, doesn't he? When he has that angry, bright red face and everything.
So even Mr. Rottweiler, laugh straight away. He gets a laugh. Just, you don't need a single bit of backstory.
But he's interesting one that we actually see. So a lot of the names and various characters in Richie and Eddie's world, we don't actually see them, do we?
Yeah.
Like obviously Spud Gun, Hedgehog we meet, Rottweiler we meet, Mrs. Potato, but like a lot of them you're asked to conjure it up in your mind, which is actually often funnier. Because when you meet Skull Crusher Henderson, he's a big horrible looking bloke, but nowhere near what you imagine Horace Big would look like. Obviously then in the live show they bring on the ridiculous body, don't they, like at the door.
Cannibal
like,
Taffio Jones, similar. You just hear him and you don't even I guess it's POV from him at the end.
All of
You don't
these,
see him at all.
no, it's true. all of these characters, often their default setting with Richie and Eddie is to go to violence. You see that a lot in Bottom. As you said, Matt, even the authority figures, twice when the police are in the show, once when they turn up at the flat after the burglary and once during the parade, are instances where they both actually assault Richie. And
whack him, Jenkins,
Yeah.
and we invite everyone to fall on you and give you a good kicking.
Yeah.
The police are not to be respected.
Yeah.
That's it's a Rick Mal sort of thing, isn't it? I think. Rick from the Young Ones hated the pigs.
Yeah.
And there's talk as well, wasn't it? I think Paul Jackson was telling us of, the police really like the show. It's, oh no, not the pigs. Oh God,
Yeah.
hate that idea. But I think that's very working class 70s sort of thing of mistrusting the police. I don't know if Rick Mal was actually like that, but my dad was always sort of bred that into me, like, oh yeah, don't trust the police.
Yeah, it's either that you really, really respect them blindly, or you do take the mickey, or you would never ever give a police officer the information they want, because then you'd be a grass.
Yeah.
You know, there's that kind of honour amongst thieves kind of attitude towards the police, isn't there? That it's us and them.
Tom Baker wrote in his autobiography that in Liverpool growing up, the saying was, once a policeman, never a man.
Well, okay. Wow. I mean, I'm from near Liverpool. I've never heard that one. But yeah, just the idea that you'd ever tell the busies anything, like, you know, would make you less of a person. Like, you know, you're not honourable if we're like, you know, it's actually like flip reverse from what you're meant to respect them and trust the police, but they will literally sell you down the river before. Like,
so why is the universe of Bottom, it's not a fictional place, it's set in a real place called Hammersmith that back in the 90s was a little bit more of a shithole than it is now. It's a little bit more metropolitan, shall we say. I guess Hammersmith, I don't know, it sounds posh, the word Hammersmith. It's not like Bognor or Skegness.
Well, the way Richie says Hammersmith does sound pretty posh, doesn't it?
Why do you think they picked Hammersmith?
But even Hammersmith sounds violent. I mean, hammer's in there, isn't it? When you think about it that way, like. Yeah. I've only ever been through the station. Obviously, I've been to Rick's Bench now, and I've been to the Hammersmith Apollo, but I've never really explored anywhere else around Hammersmith.
Well, Hammersmith now is quite gentrified, and all the property costs a lot of money. I think back in the 90s, it was a bit of a rundown area, so I think they probably chose it for that particular reason.
But do you think they were, obviously, I mean, not to hark back to Steptoe and Son all the time, but that's based in Shepherd's Bush.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, so it's like kind of that out of the centre, kind of forgotten about, run down areas, and they obviously wanted to find somewhere where they could place it in the real world.
Also, I think both Rick and Aid lived around that sort of area. They were kind of West London based, both of them. Rick was Barnes, I think, and Aid was further north, but still around there.
Because didn't Rick say that he used to go past on the bus or something where the bench was, and he was actually upset when the bench went? Wasn't that a thing that he'd said in an interview? And that's one of the reasons why, of course, like the bench was kind of put back in memory of him.
When I was pretty young, it was in the 90s, I'm sure, me and my mate went to Hammersmith to try and find the bottom bench, and no information at all. Went to Hammersmith train station, got off, and then let's have a look around, spent like hours, no luck at all, and then started speaking to people. Excuse me, do you know where the bottom bench is? What?
Oh, man.
What are you talking about?
You know what? I was really expecting that story to go, and we just walked out the station, there it was in front of us. It was the easiest thing we'd ever found.
No.
Do you think at that point that was it?
It was gone.
It was gone by then.
Yeah. But it's before the internet was readily available. We were just two kids.
Yeah.
Excuse me, mister.
Well, the bench is on Google now, isn't it?
It is now.
It's actually
the
the Rick Mail Memorial Bench, yeah. But yeah, the Dark and Grocery Universe, the idea of them being in a real place, I think, was important, though. Even though they make up weird and wonderful names for people and everything, I think it was important to ground it properly in London. Yeah. But they obviously wanted it to be the opposite to the middle class sitcom where you're based in Surrey somewhere, it's Norbiton, isn't it, for Reggie Perrin, and is it Surbiton for The Good Life?
It is, yeah.
Does it ground it having a real place name but being, it could kind of be set anywhere?
It could obviously Royston Vasey's a made up place name, isn't it? Like that adds to the weird world of the League of Gentlemen, but I think because their characters are so grotesque and out of the ordinary, whereas Richie and Eddie they're meant to, even though they're absurd, they're meant to exist, aren't they?
I found myself trying to think of rules for this particular universe, or things that kind of came to define its grossness. And I found myself comparing it to the Middle Ages in London. So I'd like to just give a few examples and see if they chime here. London in the Middle Ages. Diet is poor and meat of questionable quality is often eaten by the populace. The city is sometimes beset by fires. Crime and villainy are rampant. Thievery abounds. Medicine is primitive. Attempts at surgery often end horribly for the patient. Sexual deviancy is rife. Rubbish and excrement are thrown from windows into the streets below.
Oh, of course, yes.
That is literally as if you're reading down what they wanted to
Victorian.
achieve in Bottom, isn't it?
And you could say there are some things that still actually define London or the world now, such as
Dog shit kebab.
sexual deviancy. No, but I suppose it's like that thing I said earlier of everything is dialed up to 11 slightly. We'll take something that does exist in the real world, but we'll hypercharge it and go for the worst element of it or the most funny element of it.
Yeah.
It's probably linked to Rick and Aid doing what we've said to be a live action cartoon. You know?
Well, how do you get the most outrageous laugh? It's by being the biggest laughs that you get is through the shock of what you're watching. And I think going back to our physical comedy episode, it's that idea of what's the comedian doing? He's acting outside the realms of social norms.
Yeah.
And he can be really crude and really filthy. And that is going to conjure up laughter. So the more out of the ordinary and the more grotesque and the more grim and grime and literally like almost horror kind of elements are going to make you laugh more, which is obviously why we all love Bottom so much, because it is so ludicrous.
And on the surface, I guess it doesn't show you like Royston Vasey, you like, oh, it's weird. It sort of presents itself as a traditional sitcom, kind of normal. Yeah. And then, the weirdness starts drip feeding through.
Like you said, it's on the face of it, Bottom's a two-man kind of sitcom with a sofa in the living room.
So a good way to sort of look at it and realise just how unique a universe Bottom has is if you do compare it to other sitcoms and ask yourself, when in other sitcoms does anyone ever do anything that approaches the level of darkness and grossness that we see in Bottom?
Right. Steptoe and Son.
Okay, so Steptoe and Son, League of Gentlemen, but then apart from that, I was struggling to think of just little individual bits. So
I've got one.
Let me give you two examples. One was something that I really laughed at and then behaving badly.
Yep, it was badly.
Do you want a pickle chili with that? No, is this something else? The thing I was going to say was when Dorothy has her appendix removed.
Yeah. At
the end of that episode, Tony can't see because he's put fuzzy bleach in his eyes, and Gary offers him the appendix in a jar, but says, "Do you want a pickled chili with that?" And he eats it. But that is like the final gag that brings you into the credits, and everyone's groans at it. Yeah, in Bottom, that would be like a throwaway thing.
Yeah, sure.
The one other thing that I thought of was actually in Friends, that happy, sanitised sitcom. There's an episode where Rachel challenged Ross to drink a glass of chicken fat.
You were going to drink the fat.
Yes, that's the one. Insults thrown around, and
but that comes from Joey drinking it first.
Oh shit!
Joey goes to because it's Joey. He'll go to the fridge. He'll find anything that he can eat. That's his character. Like, and he takes a sip from it, and like, yep, it's fat. Just drank fat.
But he doesn't down the entire thing, does he?
No, he just takes a sip, puts it back.
And Chandler had it as well, isn't it? Yeah, I tried it.
And
earlier.
they do a callback with it because Monica's like, has someone been drinking my fat? You know.
So most of that episode, the story is built around the moment when it leads to the moment when he's going to drink it, and actually they then pull their punches, and Rachel stops him drinking it at the last moment.
Yeah, it's because it's disgusting and vile, and no one would do it willingly.
So in Bottom, I think that pint would have been down without thought, and then they would have just moved on quickly to the next gag. It would have been a thing and then done. But in Friends, it's like a thing that builds, and you can't do that. Oh, that's disgusting.
Yeah. But I will say, obviously you've mentioned Bottom. The Young Ones is another sitcom. Obviously, it's within the Rick and Aid vile universe. But I will also say It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. If you haven't watched all of it, please do, listener, because they've got the same amount of squalor going on. Like, Charlie...
The grilled Charlie.
Charlie actually eats like ridiculous stuff off the radiator, and when Danny DeVito's character Frank comes in, and when he's got like a toe knife, he's like carving stuff out of his toes. They eat like all kinds of ridiculous things in It's Always Sunny. I think, does he actually eat a rat in one episode?
There's raccoon.
Is there that as well? But I'm pretty sure he ends up eating a rat as well in one of the later ones.
He kills a lot of rats and stuff. I don't think he ever eats it.
I think he does. I think it's like later on when he's in that. Isn't he like really, really delirious in that one where he's doing like the Home Alone thing? But they've all gone to watch the football, and he's like set up loads of booby traps for himself.
His leg in a bear trap and stuff.
Yeah,
Did he eat a rat in that one?
Yeah, so that if you anyone just watch that one, I mean, like, my God, it is ridiculous the amount of stuff that they go through in that. And so yeah, like I'd say It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is another one that's now entered since Bottom that has this weird dark universe, and it's so unusual for American sitcoms because, like you say, like Friends, you can't think of many other gross out kind of stuff, but weirdly there's a lot of gross out humour that happens in American kind of teenage comedies, aren't they? You know, like all of the spoof
the scary movies and stuff.
There are some really, really grim things that happen in them.
To a lighter extent, things like the American Pie films and Porky's and things like that.
But in the world of sitcom, like, you're absolutely right, Bottom is a rarity, isn't it, in terms of how dark and grim their life is. I don't know, in Steptoe and Son, I mean, one of my favourite gross bits of it. Have you seen the one where Albert's in the bath and he drops all the pickled onions in there? He's eating pickled onions in the bath. In itself is just disgusting. And then he drops them all in, and then he puts them all back in the jar. And as he's doing it, Harold comes in and sees him. And he just sees him. He's like, "You weren't going to tell me, were you? You were going to let me eat them pickled onions in your dirty bath. What are you, dirty old man?" Yeah, so you dirty old man. Like, that just sums up how grim and grotesque.
Did you ever see the live show of Steptoe and Son?
Do you know, I haven't, no.
It was written by Ray Galton, and it was kind of finale as such. Like, they killed off old man Harold and then he's haunting the son and stuff, and you see a bunch of flashbacks of old episodes and things.
Oh wow! So almost like a Scrooge.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Yeah. It was really good. And there's a bit when Harold brings back a bird, and then you see him having a bath in the middle of the flat below, his bare ass out on stage and stuff.
Yeah, there's loads of moments of that in Steptoe, and I haven't actually watched a lot of Hancock's Half Hour, but I don't know how grotesque kind of they go. But there's definitely a kind of like people on the bottom rung of the ladder trying to work their way up. I mean, there's a lot of kind of like, I mean, I saw there was one that was like gambling. That's what they're trying to do. There's even one that I watched where he's reading like through the paper and all kinds of things to get to enter competitions. To win money. Like, he's like, I've left my job and now all I'm going to do is try and enter competitions and get loads of money from it. And then his mate Sid, he's like, right, I'm putting a bet on the horses, basically. No, the dogs, I think it is. So that's a very Richie and Eddie sort of thing. He's like, all these layabouts or whatever, and he's like filling in his like, and he does say the Bugle as well in it.
What is it, a newspaper?
Yeah, he's looking through it, and it's like the Bugle, they've got this. And I was like, wow, there are just little things, and you don't even know whether that's gone into Rick and Aid's mind, almost, it's like an osmosis, or whether they've actually said, we'll call it the Bugle because that's what it's called in Hancock's Half Hour.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was inspired by that, because how many papers, even local papers, do you hear that are called the something Bugle? It's
not Daily now. Bugle in New York, Spider-Man. That's what I think of when I hear the Bugle. I don't actually hear it in real life, you're right. It makes me really, that's all I think about when I hear the Bugle.
Like, I know that they do exist. I know there's probably like a few regional ones dotted around the UK, but then it's not really a very common thing.
No, but it's quite a funny word, isn't it?
Yeah.
And also, that's a very dark university thing where everyone's on the take, even the people who run the spot the ball competition, like Terry Venables wins it.
Everyone can be bribed, everyone can be bought, everyone's looking to rob everyone else at the drop of a hat. Yes. In fact, if you dropped your hat, someone would steal it.
Stalk Margarine. Well, actually, no, they don't take bribes. They didn't take the bribe, I didn't win.
Not much point because he took the fiver out, didn't he?
That's right, yeah.
How much do you think the state of Richie and Eddie's flat contributes or is representative of the dark and gross universe they live in?
98% of it. That's a very exact figure that I'm very sure of. No, I mean, it's because their whole world's depraved and squalid. That's where they live. That's where they spend most of the time. It, by definition, would be a shithole.
If anything, it's too clean, though, isn't it? Like sometimes, like who does? I suppose Richie does eventually clean up. He's kind of putting stuff in the bin, and throwing it out the window. Yeah. They would literally have shit smears everywhere, wouldn't they?
Yeah, it looks messy, but it's not cluttered and stuff. There's obviously, practically, because it's a sitcom, they need to be able to move around and do things. If it was an actual shithole place, you wouldn't be able to move from beer cans and stuff on the floor. But yeah, we'll give them that.
I'd like to read you guys an extract from a book that I read a while ago, and it made me think of Bottom when I was reading this particular extract. The character's name is mentioned early on in this, but I'm not gonna refer to them by their name just to keep it a bit of a surprise towards the end.
And we have to guess.
You know, right? The point of this isn't to guess who the character is; it's just to hear it, and then at the end we'll discuss sort of why it made me think of Bottom.
Okay.
The alarm clanged to life, and he emerged from under sheets that looked and smelt as if they had been used by mating hippos. He started to grope around to silence the banshee wail that sliced through his head like a laser knife. He jacked open one eye and started to search for the off button. He turned the clock round and round, all the time its grotesque buzz burrowing through his eyes and making his toothache worse. The boil on the inside of his left nostril throbbed more than ever. After longer than it took to get served in an electrical store on a Saturday afternoon, he arrived at the conclusion. There was no off button. He hurled the clock to the floor and smashed it to death with the heel of his shoe. Or he thought he had, but no, just as he was climbing back into bed, the clock lurched back into life. He decided the only solution was to evacuate the room. He closed the door behind him and found himself in the kitchen. The smell of dead gravy sodomized both his nostrils. Leaning towers of dirty washing were piled on every available worktop. He skated his way across the fat, splashed floor and opened the fridge. Green milk pussed out of bottles. Something that looked dangerously close to an orangutan fetus was in a bowl covered in cling film. Well, he thought, I've lived in worse places than this. In fact, the fridge and kitchen are pretty tidy. He looked down at the welcome hamper on the table and picked up the letter which had been placed on top. Dear Mr. Lister, welcome.
I was about to say, that really reminds me of Red Dwarf.
Yeah. Dear Mr. Lister, welcome to hell. Once you've settled in, we hope your stay with us here will be an excruciating nightmare of torment and revulsion. If for any reason you discover anything is comfortable or pleasant, or in any way to your liking, please do not hesitate to call us and one of our staff will be very happy to ensure that everything is extremely unpleasant again as soon as possible. Yours, as ever, the Siberian Management. Lister peered in at the hamper's contents. Sprout broth, sprout pate, sprout wine, 4 packs of herbal cigarettes, a carton of dog's milk, and a book called Hamilton Academicals, The Glory Years. Suddenly, from the apartment above, the strains of a Neil Diamond song vibrated the dead light bulb, while from the apartment next door, the bass thump of a demented drum solo began to pound his skull.
Oh my god, all those references. The dog milk little callback, really good. Drum next door, that'd be appalling. Yeah. That's absolutely.
So that's from the book Last Human, one of the Red Dwarf books, and this is
the last one as well. The fourth,
the last
fourth
one.
one. Yeah.
Lister has been put into some sort of punishment program. He's committed an infraction on some planet, and this is the punishment. And what this thing does is they put you in a sort of artificial environment that scans your mind and puts you in your idea of hell. So all the things that you hate.
Yeah.
And it seemed to me that when I read this, it made me think of Bottom, and it was quite funny that this is Lister's idea of hell, and Lister is one of sitcom's biggest slobs.
Yes, that's unusual. That I don't think he. As you say, he's lived in worse places than this.
Yeah.
Well, Lister, I think, without Crichton and without the ship, would be living in a shithole, wouldn't he? But obviously, he can't leave Red Dwarf too squalid because it all gets kind of cleaned up for him.
If you read, the first book, where he lives is in a storage locker.
Yeah.
He hides that. When he applies to the Space Corps, they just think it's some sort of joke, this address. The knockers, he comes, hello. I tried sleeping rough once, slept on a bench, woke up naked with a Chinese man licking my feet. Something like that. Don't know why they have to say Chinese man. Racist.
Well, I thought it was interesting that this is his idea of hell. This is a slob's idea of hell. And yet the description of the flat seems just like another day in Richie and Eddie's place.
Yeah, and when they open the fridge and they've got, cress coming out of the old yoghurt from the Gulf War.
Yeah. Every time they mention the toilet, it needs either condemning or sealing in concrete and dumping in the North Sea.
Yeah, it's like an unsurmountable Everest to, I'm not going to tackle that today. Hell. I even had a go at flushing the toilet. It's a go at it.
Literally needs nuclear, Chernobyl foam. Yeah.
Well, I think it's shorthand, isn't it, that you just see a character. It's the same as a costume. You see the place where they live, and it's a shithole. Oh, their lives aren't together. They're not excelling at life. And, you don't want a sitcom character to be doing really well, unless it's in America, where they like that.
Or it's middle class, the underclass world that Richie and Eddie are inhabiting. Weirdly, we can't recognise it. Hopefully none of us recognise living in it. But in the young ones, there are elements of the student living and the squalor that you do if you've been through that world of university. The idea that no one's going to clean the toilet unless they really, really, really have gone to the extreme. No one's going to do the washing up. It always sits in the sink for days on end. You're looking at me blankly like you guys are like, we didn't live like that.
No, I still live
students,
like that.
We had an amazing clean time. No, but you see what I mean? Like the world in Bottom it's there in the base kind of humour of it's grim and you can recognise that, but then they go one step further to get the huge laugh out of you because of course it's ludicrous that there's crest growing out of a yoghurt and they wouldn't have thrown it away yet.
I thought it was interesting you mentioned the middle class thing, because I know this kind of ties into the costumes that we talked about, but in Bottom there's this dark, depressing, dirty universe. They live in a dark, dank, dirty flat with a disgusting toilet, yet their clothes are always clean, the shirts are white. I know the pants are dirty, but outwardly they're always clean and respectable.
But they talk about their BO.
They do,
and they talk about how grim, like they've glued on underpants.
Yeah.
And
but it's not like you ever see them like with sort of soot on their faces, like in Dickensian London or something. But in the young ones, the costumes of the characters, Mike was always fairly well turned out. The other three characters, I would say their clothes were always quite worn, weren't they? Neil's definitely, but even Rick and Vivian, you wouldn't look at those and go, oh, those are brand new clothes. Yeah. But Richie and Eddie, look, if you saw them outwardly on the street, you'd think they've probably got a bit of money, probably got,
or just at least they're normal. You just think, they look very normal. Which is not what you think about anyone. But they add a lot of spots and stuff to the characters in Young Ones as well. Well, maybe they didn't. Or they were younger back then.
They definitely added them to Rick, didn't they? Well, it's interesting you mentioned the medieval and the Middle Ages, because Neil almost looks like a medieval peasant, doesn't he?
He does.
When you think about his costume and his hair, and he does just look quite dirty, doesn't he?
Yeah. When they do a Middle Ages sketch in the Young Ones, the serfs in it, you're right, they just look like they're dressed like Neil.
Yeah. Go back to Blackadder, like Baldrick, like that. He's always filthy, isn't he? And you're right, like Richie and Eddie don't look filthy, even though you can tell that they're meant to have body odour and they don't really have the best personal hygiene. When they are planning to go out, they're spraying on the pheromone spray and they are like, drawing chest hair on themselves and shaving their tongues and
getting ready. Some form, at least their form of personal hygiene and grooming happens.
So what would you say are the grossest moments that come to mind in Bottom? There's bits that sound disgusting, so I'm thinking of the splashing sound of Rick's diarrhea when he's been electrocuted. That's pretty gross, but you never see poo.
You mean the cattle prod?
What did I say? Sorry.
You said no. I'm just saying you talk about the cattle prod scene.
Yeah. I don't think you ever see shit in Bottom, do you?
You just hear and them talk about it. I like
the. You see
make
it
my eyes
smeared
water.
on Richie's head as he takes off the horrible Donald Trump Kilroy wig. There's shit smeared, isn't there, on his forehead when he gets pulled out of the toilet.
Bottom line 3, there's shit up his back.
Yeah.
Which is just a black. Looks sort of like a burn scorch mark more than a skid mark.
Yeah. Apart from that, you don't tend to see a lot, do you? Thinking of bodily fluids, you see Eddie throws up, you see a little bit of vomit splash over Richie.
Gets a bit of blood, but that's more violent than gross out. But I mean, that's a little bit interchangeable. Some people are very sickened by the sight of blood, like the finger being chopped off,
Eddie cutting his own wrist,
and the wrist. And you said before, Ange, that seems more real. The cutting of his wrist and the spurt in the artery, and that it just feels grosser.
Yeah, it's like violently realistic, isn't it? Like that gross thing. But when you say gross, I suppose like it is things like, I mean, the tissues in the background in Richie's bedroom and things like that. You notice them, don't you? But like you don't really take them in unless you're watching for a second or third time.
Yeah.
I mean, eating lard out of the fridge. I mean, I think that the way obviously Aid just is eating lard, so you really feel how disgusting that was.
As he said in that Guardian interview, you can't really fake that, can you? To which I did think, you can. I'm sure there's some kind of food stuff that you can put in your mouth that isn't fucking
probably
animal
just
fat.
Cheaper to just eat edible though, isn't it? Like
butter would be nicer than lard, surely, and looks pretty much the same.
Yeah.
I guess him eating the Sprouts Mexican, just that's all in his performance. He's just putting something that I'm sure is completely fine, and in his mouth, and when becomes gross.
When he's got the caviar in his mouth, like, and it's all black all over his tongue.
Yeah. Well, also throwing the caviar away into the bin that's full of scraps of lettuce and stuff, and then putting it back in the bowl. But you mentioned the Sprouts Mexican. Actually, it's quite a dark and gross universe reaction to that all 4 characters who eat it end up farting flames, isn't it?
But you're right when it's like, that's about 200 quid's worth there. When you scrape down, he's getting it all out, and like you say, it's like the old rotting veg is like coming back out with it.
Where was how long had that cabbage and stuff been in there? Because they're not having cabbage for that meal.
Yeah.
Charming flat. That's when anyone comes into their flat that's from the outside, I can imagine them being appalled. And But she's on the take, isn't she? She's trying to get some money, so she's just putting on a brave face.
Just
but
the
yeah, she
pleasantries.
obviously
Yeah.
can. Yeah, that is a very loaded comment. It's a bit passive aggressive, isn't it? It's, charming.
Yeah.
This plat is awful.
Because it's interesting, isn't it? Like, because some of it's very descriptive, how they describe like horrible things that have happened. Then other times, because in sitcom generally they tell you to show, don't tell, don't they?
Yeah.
And in the pilot episode contest, like when Eddie picks up that bit of where he's like, "What's this grilled lettuce?" And it's like, "Oh, it's bacon." It's like, "It's green," and they're kind of showing all that, but you don't see the green fly, because obviously that would be hard to show on camera.
Yeah.
But it's the description mixed with the sight that you're seeing, isn't it? A lot of the time in Bottom.
I think they get the balance right most of the time between describing things and showing things, because if they didn't show anything, it would be like you'd hear all this stuff that they talk about that's gross. But if you don't see anything gross on screen, you have difficulty believing it exists in this universe. You have to do some of it in order for the rest of it to actually
it's harder to
feel
sell,
real.
isn't it? But like if Spud Gun didn't come in looking so disgusting, it's like, give me a potato and I'll show you why.
Yeah.
And then the topper of like, give me a hedgehog and I'll show you why. Obviously it'd be really grim if they actually showed what their party trick is. Like, it's just in your mind, isn't it? It's like, well, clearly they're using their penises to do something despicable.
Animals often fare badly in this Bottom universe, don't they?
That's true.
Dogs end up in kebab shops. Cats end up squashed in dustbins, being shaken around.
Yeah, that's right.
Because Tubbs Lardy killed them. Hedgehogs we don't know what happens exactly with hedgehogs, but something bad. Any other animals? I've done 3. I can't think of any more.
There's so many animals. There's 1, 2, and then maybe more.
Hang on.
The parrot.
Parrot gets shot. Yeah. And does Richie
Pig.
try and have sex with
And
the parrot as well?
who left the rotting tortoise on the top step?
Yeah.
Even though that
But it's
turns out to
not
be
a
a war
tortoise,
helmet, it's
is
the
it?
helmet, isn't it?
Yeah.
Full of the cat shat in it.
No, that's it for animals.
I think so.
But the idea of being, cruel or just not regarding animals as an important thing, because the idea that a cat's been squished into a can, and all you're going to do is go up to it and shake it around to hear the cat's corpse still in there, rather than actually do something and like bury this poor thing.
Fish can't survive in the fetid water of Wimbledon Common in this
Elvis.
universe. Oh, sorry, and Elvis.
We've had to kill Elvis.
I was thinking of the fish in Wimbledon Common that must be that big, but you're right.
Yeah.
Even in the opening of Apocalypse,
actually poking a dead goldfish in the tank.
It's very murky water as well, isn't it? So it wouldn't have been long for this world.
it's a universe of decay and petrification.
Yeah, but again, like, you don't see a lot of the really horrible stuff, and I think we mentioned a couple of episodes ago about the dog that gets squished in Fish Called Wonder.
Yeah.
And that they actually showed it to the audience and they found it too much. They didn't laugh until it was a comedy dog. There is a line, isn't there, between what people will laugh at, and in The League of Gentlemen, when Chinnery, the vet, kills various animals, or
they're all
like
so funny.
horrors befall them, don't they? It does have to be quite funny for you to laugh at it, doesn't it? It can't be like very,
Dog
very
on
real.
fire with it clearly a puppet at one point, just looking. It's like 1 second long shot of it on the fireplace,
horrific, yeah.
and then explodes because it's full of gas.
So in the case of both Bottom and the League of Gentlemen, then, in order to differentiate something from just being horrific and make it funny, you have to make it slightly outlandish, you have to make it outrageous, it has to be sort of almost cartoonish,
And I think it has to work because of the trope that Chinnery wants to be a good vet, and he will never achieve that because of it's the curse in the end that they explain it as. But it's the comedy trope, like it's a vet who kills every animal he touches. Like that is the thing in all of those sketches.
Getting hired.
You
would have done maybe 2 of them, and then word would have got round.
But it's not intentional. That's the thing. He's not trying to be horrible to them. And that, I think, is the
why
key
it's
thing.
funny. Yeah.
That's why you're allowed to laugh at it, because if you were watching someone who was purposely harming all these animals, it wouldn't be funny at all.
Like, haha, okay.
Yeah. Whereas with Richie and Eddie, like, they're not harming animals, but the idea of phoning up the kebab shop and they're like murdering Alsatians to put in the kebab, like, that's just like nothing to Richie and Eddie, isn't it? Oh yeah. His Alsatian got run over last week, so it's just that vile universe that they inhabit. It's like, he's fine for meat for the rest of the week. They're trying to sell human meat to him, aren't they?
That's right. Yeah.
If you think about the grossest thing in Bottom, actually, they're trying to get rid of the gas man. By the things they go through, how they get rid of the gas man to avoid going and doing 25 years in prison.
Or they freak out
have sex with him, like cut him up and feed him to the local kebab shop. And you almost feel like, Eddie would probably go and buy a kebab as well, wouldn't he? After that, like a week later, he'd forget about the fact it was the dead gas man. He'd probably go and eat it, wouldn't he?
How long does it take them to get over the shock of committing murder before they're going for
about
these
5
things?
seconds.
It really is pretty
And
quick.
they're almost disappointed when he wakes up, aren't they? You know, it's like, but okay, you just get him out of the flat. But I'm actually, I just thought of another gross out moment in sitcom, which is when they're eating the dead guy in Red Dwarf in Series 7 when it's JFK.
Oh, right.
And is it that
It's that man we found.
Yeah, Cat's lost his ability to... Guilt, is it?
No. Crichton is Spearhead free instead of Crichton.
That's right. So he doesn't realise that he's like, I ran it through and I thought, well, humans eat other meat, so they must eat human.
Yeah.
There's no problem with
I
that,
didn't
is
get any
there?
error commands. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And that's pretty grim, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then obviously we haven't mentioned Peep Show with the dog as well.
Oh.
With Mummy.
Fur on it.
Yeah.
But
it's a turkey. It's a turkey leg. Yeah.
Now, with Peep Show, although that's funny, that's really grim to watch.
Yeah.
And I think that's because the dog looks so realistic. It looks like a dead dog that's only been put on burned on a fire rather than charred, rather than barbecued until you can't see what it is.
Yeah.
The grim reality of them trying to set it on fire and the dog being mostly water and all this stuff. And what's that you got there? Barbecue. Do you want some? I really think you should have some.
Yeah.
No,
I
did a
don't.
barbecue.
No, I'm not hungry at all. So Peep Show actually does have these moments, doesn't it, as well?
What also really sells that scene and makes it really grim is Robert Webb's performance. He looks as though he's genuinely got dog meat in his mouth, and he's like, and he's feeling completely sick from it.
Probably is genuinely a turkey leg in reality.
I think it was, but it's the hair on
Little
it
bits
and
of
everything.
matted hair on
And
it.
the fact, also just the fact it's not actually cooked, is it? Like, oh god,
It's barely, it doesn't look cooked right. And then it's what's that? And he's got the fucking collar in there with a bag.
yeah. It's like, Mummy, you've eaten Mummy, you killed Mummy, and eaten Mummy. Yeah.
Well, I'll send you that CV. Get up.
Yeah, and that scene's sold because Mark's desperately just trying to get an in there, isn't he? And it's just ruined by Jeremy. I don't know whether they would have actually gone that far in Bottom. Do you? It felt like that was.
I think they would have for sure.
I suppose. I don't know. Richie and Eddie actually eating dead dog on camera just feels like a step too far.
They would have, but I don't think it would have been recognisable. Dead dog, it would have looked like something else. The fact that it's dead dog would be sort of moved on quickly. They'd eat it, and then there would be more consequences from that, if that makes sense. I think they'd probably eat all of it.
Well, and then they'd be terribly ill or whatever,
Yeah.
almost like Sprouts Mexican, maybe,
Yeah.
farting and shitting everywhere. I don't know. But yeah, that moment, because I love Peep Show, but I think that was one where I cringed and felt that's a bit much.
Yeah.
Still
Bit
laughed.
much. I think bit much is just enough. With this sort of stuff, a bit much is the right amount. You want to be shocked.
It
The
gets you-
line, just
yeah.
tiptoe over the line.
Yeah.
That's where the sweet spot is.
It's true, but then it can go wrong, I think, in certain... I can't remember the film completely, but The Sex Lives of the Potato Men, I seem to remember there were lots of moments in that film that were just not funny.
Right.
Even though they were trying, on paper, they obviously thought, yeah, this will play, it'll be a bit grim, but it'll play. And it really didn't. Did it?
I've
I
not seen
had
it,
a really
actually.
good cast in it and everything. There's no reason why that film shouldn't have done well. I think it's Johnny Vegas and Mackenzie Crook
Yeah.
and Mark Gatiss. I think that was why I went to see it from The League of Gentlemen.
You just made me remember when he mentions this on the Richard Herring Leicester Square podcast, and he says every now and then someone comes up to me and goes, "Oh, motherfucker, that's my favourite film." To which I say, about 11:30.
Yeah, because it was really grim and missed the mark. So I think you can miss the mark on these things. So it's actually a really, really delicate line you're crossing with gross humour, I think.
Yeah.
And Bottom, they do it. They're doing it on purpose, but it's because it's almost cartoon that they get away with it in that, isn't it?
And with that, I think we'll have a quick word from our sponsor.
The Talking Bottom book is available to pre-order from unbound.com/bottom. It's a guide to the cult sitcom written by 3 nerds who have never worked on a sitcom in their lives. That's a lie. Matt's worked on a sitcom. Well was Edge of Heaven a sitcom?
It's meant to be.
it was-
and worked on.
It was
I
Sid.
mean, yeah, I directed a sitcom pilot,
Oh, that's true. Okay.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
They
maybe.
didn't get
get picked
make
up.
anyway. Yeah,
No.
okay. Yeah.
3 people who have no authority on sitcoms.
There we go.
Why do you think in Guest House Paradiso the whole vomit sequence doesn't really work?
Again, bit too grim, isn't it?
Right.
and overplayed.
Yeah.
It's like you're laughing at the same joke over and
Yeah.
over, isn't it? Really.
I think that's exactly what it is. The first vomit, that's quite funny, and then it's a bit more. It's the same. It's the same. Yeah.
And then that big ball of vom that comes rolling down, like
That should kind of work, but for some reason, I didn't think it did.
Yeah,
No.
and his expanding cheeks that
And then
portends
go
it.
rubbery. Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
That is. Oof.
it was like they were trying, because obviously there's the moment in The Meaning of Life where Mr. Creosote explodes, and that's grim, isn't it? It's like they were trying to do that because he's got like the vomit bucket next to him and everything, hasn't he? And
Bucket.
But I would argue that the Mr. Creosote sketch stays funny through it. He keeps on vomiting, and it's still funny. And yet in Guest House Paradiso, they keep on ramping up the
I
vomit,
think
and yet it gets less funny.
Because there's a lot of decorum and class surrounding him, and I think that's where the what's the word I'm looking for?
Dichotomy?
No, like just a
Difference?
comparison,
Okay.
really. With
juxtaposition.
it's a juxtaposition of the posh people, and
Do
you
you
see
think-
that one person be repulsed by this and cough up a tiny bit of vomit, and his guest like, oh my god, would you,
Right.
will you
But
please?
do you think it's also maybe because the horror of it is befalling? So Mr. Creosote's a horrible, vile character, isn't he? So you're kind of glad when he is eating himself to the point of exploding because he's grim. Do you think it's because the people in Guest House Paradiso are actually innocent guests that are having this befall them? Almost, maybe? That the joke is on the wrong side of the person who deserves it?
on paper, I think
Maybe?
being violently sick all over a child, I
Yeah,
think
that's
is really
quite
funny.
funny, that bit, isn't it? But then it just gets less and less funny as it goes on.
I still laugh out loud every time I see that scene in The In-Betweeners where Simon vomits. Is it the character Simon? Where Simon vomits over the kid.
Yeah. Well, the one I think of is when. So which one's Simon? The boring one.
Yeah.
When he froze up and then kisses that girl.
That's the same episode.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's literally he's just like well horny. This girl was giving him a bit of interest. She's pissed out of her head.
Oh, sorry, no, we're conflating the two there. There's an episode where she throws up and is like, "Kiss me," and he's like, "Oh, well, I still want to kiss you, even though."
Is
you
it that it?
Yeah.
And then like proper tonguing.
When they're kissing, she's the one who's been sick,
Okay.
and he puts up with it for the sake of a snog.
Sure.
Yeah.
Grim. Do you know I haven't watched The In-Betweeners, and I know I really should.
It's all
Really?
right.
I know.
Oh,
I've
man.
not
Right.
watched it. I've seen like a couple of bits of it. I've seen the one where it's Will, isn't it? The
Yeah.
one who is he played by Simon Bird? Yeah.
Yes.
Will is losing his virginity, or he doesn't even, does he? I think.
No, he doesn't.
He
He's
just
called
sort of
premature-
lays on
premature
Emily
ejaculation
Attack and
or
grinds
whatever.
up and down. Yeah.
I've seen that one. I've seen the one where they go to Alton Towers, isn't it? And the bus wankers and everything. And like, I really do like, and like Greg Davies is brilliant in it. Like, but I need to. And I saw the film. Weirdly, but I need to watch all of the series of In-Betweeners. But is that quite gross in parts then? Because obviously
Little bits.
there are a few bits, yeah.
I mean,
But it's not the whole universe. They're in
No.
the real world.
yeah,
They
it's
are.
They're in the real world, which is why the gross bits feel grosser. Peep Show's in the real world, which is why the dog thing feels bad. But Bottom, because it has its own universe with its own weird set of cartoon type laws, it's not that everything doesn't feel gross. It's just that it all kind of falls under the same umbrella, and it feels normal. You don't look at it and go, "That wouldn't happen in real life." It actually feels like it's part of the.
But until you're
fabric.
analysing it like we do, and
Yeah.
they're why would they do that? Yeah, well, because it's a TV show. But the other thing about Bottom is that they're doing it because like Rick and Aid are obviously they're comedy characters, and it's okay to laugh at them. They're almost like the pantomime villains or whatever, aren't they? In their own downfall. Like it's that thing of like the end of every sitcom, they're meant to end up back where they were and no better off for any of their dastardly schemes, and that happens as well. So I feel like that is why Bottom really works in their universe, because you don't mind the fact that they're being grotesque because it's just how they are. If you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
Albert Steptoe, you don't think anything other than that. That's just who he is, because that's his lot, and that's
He's
he
meant
can't
to be
better
horrible,
himself.
and you don't think what a horrible, nasty man. You love him for being horrible.
What about the locations they go to? Where's your favourite place outside the flat?
Is the Lamb Flag for sure? That we see it 3 times. It's not a shit old pub really, but it's just quite a well observed, dingy, divey.
It's such an
sort of-
old man
Yeah.
pub, isn't it?
The dogs outside attacking them, throwaway gag the first time, and then bring it back every time. A little callback, funny. Convenient plot device of they need 5,000 quid, and look. the
The
top
idea that
prize.
there'd be £5,000 on
£5
offer at that pub quiz.
Absolutely, yeah, but and then within the reality of the show, it's $5,000 of dodgy money that
Yeah.
it ties back. It's consistent. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, they're
'cause
flooding the
dickheads
market with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd think the Lamb flag should have like dirtier, scummier toilets.
Well, this is. I was going to
little
say
bit
that
scummy.
they are pretty scummy, but they're not as bad as they could be, are they?
Not as
But
bad
you
as
don't
Richie
really.
Neddy's.
But again, if you saw it, would it be as good? But then the condom machine's pretty. No, it's only once they've bashed it up that it's not in
It's got
pristine condition,
stains
isn't it?
on the side, I think. Or
Yeah.
maybe that could just be. There's that nameless and faceless shitter who goes for all that posh toilet paper of the encyclopedias.
Yeah.
That's quite grim. The fact,
Yeah.
the concept of that someone would think, oh, this is posh loo paper, all bounded in leather with words on it, that's a very cartoony, surreal moment, and you don't even see it. And look, that's a character that's quite up there grim. That could be some spin-off guy, whoever that is,
The Phantom, the Defecator.
the defecator.
Yeah.
That particular bit in that scene is made more cartoonish and more gross by the splashy sort of sounds of the shits, which everyone recognises from that shit that you have. Usually it's the one when you're rushing for a flight at Heathrow and you decided to have a Wetherspoons breakfast that morning with a gin and tonic.
So now, yes, another one of you say you don't really see this yet.
This is the laughter of recognition.
Yeah.
All my worst shits are always at airports for some reason.
Yeah?
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really.
I think it's a combination of stress, you're rushing. Maybe the night before you were a bit stressed, you get up early because you're going for an early flight. You decide to have a Wetherspoons breakfast.
Your guts are kind of on edge, aren't
Yeah.
they?
A
To
lot of
get
coffee
everything
as
go-
well.
Yeah. And they say it affects your gut, doesn't it? Like that
Yeah.
kind of tension of getting a flight and everything. Yeah, you're right. Actually, I have done a few horrific shits in airports, but not to the point of ruining the place. I hasten to add. But it's always awful when you do that and then you come out and there's like a bit of a smell or whatever, and then the cleaner's there. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, there's something. I was with you, Paul. Actually, this was years and years ago. We didn't know each other that well.
Yeah.
I went to the toilet in this pub somewhere in Wimbledon, and so I went for a piss, and the urinals weren't available.
Right.
So when there was 2 cubicles, one the cubicle, I went in, and someone had shit on the toilet seat. When I left, as I was leaving, the cleaner was coming in.
And what? And they thought it was you.
Well, I don't know, but as I left, I just hear throughout the door close. Oh no! the poor guy. That's his poor job.
Yeah. I think the moral of this story is don't go drinking in Wetherspoons in Wimbledon.
Don't shit on a toilet seat.
Well, I've only ever been in ladies' toilets, and I've never seen that horrific find. If I've ever had to go in a boys' though, no, grim. Oh God, no. Well, talking of Wimbledon, what about Wimbledon Common? That's a good location, which is pretty fucking grim, isn't it?
So the not washing machine, shopping trolley in the pond.
Yeah.
It's quite well observed. It's like scummy areas where
the condom.
Yeah.
I like the fact that there's effort behind the story of that. Wimbledon Common is massive, and to get a shopping trolley into the middle of it and hurl it into a pond takes a fuck lot
What
of
was
effort.
that person doing? There's a story there.
Yeah.
Like every sign there's a story behind you. No standing on tables. Something I would have.
I never did this, but do teenagers just steal trolleys to then ride around in them, push each other
maybe.
around, and then
so.
shove their mate in a
Internet.
pond?
I mean, at some point, there must have been a reason why supermarkets introduced putting £1 in that you can get back, or having those magnetic lock things on the edge of the car park.
Yeah.
The magnetic lock actually did stop things being stolen, because £1 for a shopping trolley is a pretty good deal. Really.
Yeah.
It's not really. If you're gonna steal it, £1's only. Yeah.
I'm going to take this home and turn it into a barbecue.
If you want to give us any feedback on the themed episodes we're doing at the moment, or indeed give us any ideas to include when we're writing the Talking Bottom book, you can get in touch with us at 11maffickingparade@gmail.com, or we are on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook at Talking Bottom.
Does anyone use Facebook anymore?
I try and avoid it, apart from obviously when we're sharing all of our great news on our Talking Bottom page.
Yeah.
I don't really share a lot of things personally anymore, because you just can't be doing with people
Have you
harping
seen
in.
the VR thing that they've got? That Facebook are trying, VR meetings or something. You've got an avatar thing, and you can all be around a desk and stuff.
That sounds terrible.
It's pretty nightmarish.
Yeah.
It looks kind of fun.
So we could do the podcast from different areas, and it'll look like we're together around
and
a
you
table.
can set the area, so maybe you could put in bottom flat or something. I'm completely making that conjecture. I don't know if you can do that.
So if we ever get
technology
Aid
quite
on, then we can do that with him in the background.
I'm
like.
sure he'd love, like, well, we've sent you the VR gear. Put it on, please. What? How do you know where I live? Well, we had to send you the letter begging to come on this podcast.
No, I'm gonna
Aid,
cut this.
please come on this podcast.
And let us know if there's any dark and disgusting universes that we didn't compare Bottom to. Like, if you're a fan of Labyrinth or something, tell us we totally missed that and we're idiots for not thinking of it.
Labyrinth? What, the Jim Henson thing?
Yeah. You know, that has things like the Bog of Eternal Stench and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're trying to focus on sitcom particularly, aren't we?
Yeah.
But do give us any kind of things that we've missed. I mean, we're only trying to do this in like an hour, so we can't cover everything, but we always welcome all your feedback, good or bad. Mostly good, though, please. Otherwise, Paul and Matt's egos can't take it. But yeah, thanks very much for listening.
There's never been any negative feedback towards you, Ange.
That's true, actually. Yeah, if
It's
anyone
all-
wants to write me any hate mail.
Yeah.
There's never been any positive either, though.
Okay.
If there's ever any incels out there
Actually,
who really want...
To murder Ange, get in touch. No, I don't know. There was one guy who was like, I want to hear Angela's points, but I can't hear her on the mic, I think. From
That was series
series one?
Yeah.
As the only person I think who's actually
Acknowledged you.
let's hear what Angela wants to let's hear what Angela has to say.
Well, see you next time.
Bye.
Fuck off.